I think people, including myself, underestimate how hard it is to make a Toontown server. Like, it's a lot easier said than done to make one. You have to figure out a lot, like what's gonna be your base, what engine are you gonna be running it on, and if it's anything other than Panda 3D, then congrats, your Toontown server's already dead. What's this Toontown game gonna bring to the table? What features will it have that you can't get on other servers? Are we redoing task lines? What music will it have? New areas if you plan on doing that? The name, its game design, the people who are willing to help with it, its marketing, PR, motivation, and more are all key elements to making a Toontown server. And if we see on this graph, 98% of people claiming to make a Toontown server in 2023, it's only 2% they'll make it, and 98% it fails. This isn't even to mention leadership, or even hell, if fights end up happening causing people to quit. There's so much that has to go right when making this because too much can go wrong very quickly if you don't maintain things. So, why do I bring this up? Well, in the 98% of failed Toontown servers, I actually did help with one Toontown server that never went public. No, get out of here, you were public. And one that was kinda close from being shown to the public, but things just never went through. That game was Toontown Gear Grind. Some of you might have heard of it if you've been on my Discord back in like 2021, maybe even recently of my mentions of it, but back then I actually did help work on this game in 2020 briefly, and again in 2021 from March to October. And in that time, it was kind of fun to what I got to do with that game. But today, I'll be talking about my time helping with this game, what some plans were, and how everything ended. So, let's check it out. Now, as 2020 goes when I helped with it, it's kind of a blur actually. I don't really remember too much other than I was part of it, and then like after a month it got really quiet and the Discord got deleted. How fun. However, during that time it was around the public, I want to say around 2019 to 2020, they had some pretty noteworthy teasers to the game that I thought were pretty interesting to take a look at. To be fair, these aren't really things people would find impressive now, like they had a chat bar, new sticker book, speed chat bubbles, 7-story buildings, Sellbots with different suits, clothings in the shops being able to be purchased with jelly beans, and Pandora textures making the game look a little better. So those were some of the teasers, nothing too special, but they did have some other cool things they teased that I thought were kinda cool. These next features I'll briefly talk about, but I'll give more details later on in the video. Different colored laser cogs, like blue, green, and yellow ones, all have their special abilities, the cog gallery having Sue books over here, Taunt being a new battle mechanic, and this feature, kinda. It was supposed to be suits and clown cogs, but I think people in the Discord later explained that's really not how they worked, and this ended up getting scrapped, which was kind of funny to see. And I really wasn't around for this idea, but apparently there was going to be plans for a Big Cheese field office, and while there was no work or even anything done for it, I guess it was still kind of neat to see. So yeah, it was just small little changes that they were only showing. So while Gear Grind had ideas, at the end of the day, everyone probably got bored of it and not much work was really being done, so I guess it kind of just ended and everyone moved on to other things. They didn't really have too much going on for the most part, and all they really had to offer was just small little features to the game. After this though, the game kind of faded away as all their social medias started to disappear, and it seems like there was just no trace of it left anymore, and that was it. It just seemed like another forgotten failed Toontown server. So, the months went on, but then it came to my attention that talks about reviving it came to light, and getting the band back together to start cooking on this game again. Now, this is when I had a lot of fun with this game and made the best memories with it. Around March 2021 was when a lot of work would start. Granted though, the amount of people working on this game was pretty small. There was only two main devs being Rocket and Leo, the modelers Momo and Jeeper. Anthony, that's me, K1 Namoto, KH Decoder, and Polytelus, that were all part of the project. Other than that though, that was basically it. We didn't even have people making music for this project. So, what were those things that we were making? Well, I'm glad you asked. So loading up the game, it actually has an in-game launcher for you to put your username and password, and putting those things in, we're greeted to a Pick a Tune screen. Entering Make a Tune, you can actually notice it's a little more different than usual. A white background with some paintings, a little painting station here. It's basically like the regular Make a Tune, but with some newer things here. And yeah, it's a little more basic compared to the original. You still have some other things you can do, like change your colors to the gloves, which is surprisingly not in any main Toontown server still. I mean, I know Tooniversal, but I feel like the whole trend of color gloves has like died out for whatever reason. And while there was still gender in the game, the clothing restrictions were turned off, so you could basically wear whatever. But finally making your tune, you're swiftly thrown into Toontown Central with probably a million questions here at first. Well, to get it out of the way, there's a day and night cycle here, along with some newer buildings. More noticeably, we used an alternate version of the sticker book, which doesn't really look all that great in the game, but we decided to use it anyway. We also have the chat bar, of course, and the return of the mercantile buildings. You can basically get whatever clothing's through here, while also getting the scientist clothings as well. And also there's a mercantile for each of the playgrounds as well. Now, for these next ones, I don't really know why we made them their own shop, but I guess we did for whatever reason. There was a shop for changing the color of your name tags, and another one for you to change your gloves here, if you really wanted to change your glove color again. It also wouldn't be a Toontown server without the Disney characters, and yeah, they made an appearance here as well. Something we did try doing with all these playgrounds was redoing their treasures and making them into 3D, which for the most part we did pretty alright with. Momo made some for Toontown Central, being a chocolate ice cream, a mint ice cream, and a strawberry ice cream. And even this regular one, which I forgot to mention. We did something similar for Daisy's Gardens with orange flowers, yellow ones, and other colors we were able to do. We also followed this with Donald's Duck with its multicolored treasures, but after Daisy's, we just remade the regular treasures in 3D. While Donald's Dreamland and Acorn Acres wasn't anything too bad, but could be improved, I think we kinda messed up with Minnie's Melodylands and the Berg one. But I would say some of the alternatives in those playgrounds aren't too bad, just some of the others look not that great. Momo did a really good job with all of the models with the game, but I think we even kinda knew that these weren't all that great. We said we'd revisit them later, but yeah, that never happened. But I would say for the most part, the treasures that we remade weren't too bad, but we probably could have revisited and tweaked them better. Now, something interesting we did do while working on here was a new task line, but for the end of it, we had a mini boss that would let you revisit the tutorial area, which I kinda thought was not bad. Originally, the placement I didn't really like since it was in punchline placed to the left of you, and I kept saying that made like no sense whatsoever, but I guess we ended up putting in Toontown Central. I'm sure we could have figured out a better way of doing this, but this was the compromise we came up with. Now, going in there's a cog building with a Flunky's picture on it, with a 2-story building that serves as the final task in Toontown Central. Now, we first have to kill these waves of waiter cogs before we get to the final battle, and before you ask about the newer cogs here, we'll get to that in a second. We get this first cutscene of the cogs of how we'll have to go through them first, and they basically tell us that we won't be able to defeat them. But after clearing the first wave, we get to the final boss that's a level 6 Flunky, along with the 6 battle fight. Well, it used to be 6, but then it went down to 5. The cogs celebrate capturing Tutorial Tom, and now we basically have to kill these cogs and rescue Tom. I'm sure there was a lot of game design issues with this boss, mainly the fact this probably might have been a little too extreme for someone finishing Toontown Central. I'm sure this would have been touched up before this game came out, but again, we never really got to that point. I mean, we did get to that point, but not really to the point of polishing these design choices. After doing a little bit of fighting and killing them all, we rescue Tom, who's happy to be saved, along giving us 100 jelly beans for helping. That's until another level 6 Flunky comes here and captures Tom again, sending us back to Toontown Central. Yeah, I know, cheap ending, but that was what we came up with. We did have plans to continue this idea for some of the other playgrounds, but it was just ideas that we threw around and nothing official we worked on. Honestly, at that point, we'd probably be remaking the Hires and Heroes update from doing this. Something else that was planned for Gear Grind was the map being changed, which this was kind of a weird design choice, but the playgrounds like the Berg would have been connecting with Toontown Central, or with Donald's Dock with Donald's Dreamland. Now, this was kind of like a weird design choice that I wasn't really around to have much of a say during. I asked about it, and there was plans of redoing the map to make everything make more sense, but I kind of failed to see why these playgrounds needed to be rearranged for whatever reason. And speaking of locations, before I go into the next major point, all of the playgrounds remain the same, except for one being Daisy's Gardens. Now, why redo this? Well, it was actually based off of the older concepts Disney's had for this area, and for the most part, it's recreated to be like that. Even have the gazebo over here as well, although some changes were here, being the parties over here, and even the tunnels leading to Acorn Acres, which would be the new way of getting there besides Donald's Dock. But for the most part, it was basically a restored version of Daisy's Gardens and Toontown Online's concepts. It's definitely a little weirder seeing it for the first time, but I kind of liked it. Oh yeah, and that huge like ramp thing, that's all gone too, so yeah, it's definitely a little weirder to get used to. And yeah, we also copied Clash with that placement with the Toon HQ, but I guess there was nowhere else to put it. Now, I wasn't there for when they were redoing this area, but for the most part, I kind of liked it. I know some people who saw this didn't really like it, but it's kind of love it or hate it, this new redesign. But when it came to newer playgrounds, we did actually have a newer one. And again, I wasn't a part of this project when they made this, so it was just kind of a leftover from what they were working on back in like 2019, 2020. But in the Acorn Acres tunnel, it would be this newer area called the Resistance Hideout. And I swear to God, they had plans of this before Toontown Gear even brought this up for field offices. However, this area would have been a little more different. Ignoring the Toontown Central music here, this was pretty eerie in a foggy area with all these other suits and old factories here. Come to think of it, it reminds me of that scrapyard area in Toontown Realms called ? While this was also mentioned in Toontown Online, what this area was going to be for Resistance Grounds is unknown. Like, I don't really think we had too much plans with this area. Like, maybe we had some ideas here and there, but we didn't really know what to do with it. I think there was plans of redoing the area, but I guess we just never did. Although it would have been really cool to see what we could have made out of this area. I remember thinking when I first saw this area had such great potential and be an awesome part of the game. Sadly, we won't ever reach that potential, but at least we always have the Toontown rewritten version. However, getting this out of the way, let's delve into some things regarding the game's combat and gags. Some of the things we were doing wasn't really too much newer with the combat with the game, just updating the game visually with the newer gag models we had. We basically just updated each of them for them to look visually better. ODS has also been doing this recently as well with their gags, and yeah, this was something we were doing too. But now focusing on the game's combat, we actually had some features unique to the game, one of them being the taunt button. So here's how it would work. Let's say while fighting the cogs, your friend has lower laugh, but you seem to have higher laugh than them. To help ensure that they don't get more damage towards them so they don't die, or for whatever reason that you can't tune up them, you can use taunt for the cogs to start targeting you. Now this can sometimes vary as it can be effectful and sometimes they'll still go for you, but most of the time this taunt feature will allow cogs to draw the attention onto you. We never really had any gameplay scenarios when the taunt could be utilized, but I'm sure if you're playing the game regularly, it's possible you'd be using this to help some of your friends out. The next gameplay feature was a lot stranger. It was actually the Sue. Now you might be thinking, oh, this is literally just from Toontown Corporate Clash and behaves basically the same, right? No. So, at first glance, it kind of looks like it does nothing, and trust me when I say even I had a hard time remembering on what this does. So, looking back, apparently it actually helped to nerf the cog's damage output. So I'm guessing it was something to help decrease the cog's damage, but in all honesty, it just seems like a worse version than the Toontown Corporate Clash one. I really did like these ideas we have and just other combat with the game, and I really would have loved to see it expanded in hindsight, but we just never really went further with this aspect of the game. So something we did plan on doing was completely redoing all of the previous existing cogs in the game. Yeah, we were gonna do all of them. Even Corporate Clash hasn't redone them yet, but yep, we were that ambitious and daring to do it for whatever reason. Now, we did get far with this actually. As previously shown, some of the cogs did have different textured suits, more notably the boss spots having a darker suit texture, and the Sellbots having a different one here too. However, the Sellbots were changed to have these suits instead, being more updated and closer to what the original plans were for the game. Momo does tell me he doesn't really like them anymore, but I still kinda like them. Sure, it could have been improved, but I feel like it's very fitting for them. So, we finished all of the Sellbots. With the revamp, we went for the style of the Series 2 Toontown Online trading cards. I think that's how the art style was gonna be with all of the cogs, even the new ones that we had planned, which more on later. But this was basically gonna be the general art style for these cogs. And I won't lie, some of these actually have some pretty good conversions into 3D. The cold color came out pretty decently. With the new suits that we have, we see more of their chest over there rather than just ties, so I guess a fair trade for the more updated suits that we have, but I did like that little detail when it came with the suits. I'm not sure if all of the cogs are gonna get this update with their suits. We only did it with Sellbots, so it's unclear if this was ever gonna change with the other ones. The telemarketer. How you doing, buddy? Oh man. I was trying hard to like get this design to be a little more different. I don't know why we gave him eyes, it just looks really weird. Originally we had one that was more closer to the original, but he ended up getting scrapped and I no longer have that image of him. I don't really think any of us liked this one. I'm pretty sure we were gonna revisit it and try to fix it, but like a lot of things, we never came back to fix it. But hey, at least the name dropper was pretty alright. I liked that one. I also really liked the Gladhander. He was probably some of my favorites in the bunch. And the mover and shaker here, he was another favorite of mine too. He just looks really good. I honestly believe it's kind of hard to mess up the mover and shaker because even in Event Horizon, his redesign's also really good. And in the one in Toontown Gear Grind, he turned out really good. There was a slight issue I did have when we have him in game. He was much more blue for some reason. I don't really get why. I kind of liked how he was being more peachy, but either way, he's still a really good cog. The Two-Face was also pretty good. I like the texture work here as well. However, I think the best one out of all of them was the Mingler. It was probably the best redesign made, on top of her just looking so much more cleaned up from the original. The Mr. Hollywood was improved here too, giving him some shades like in the Series 2 trading cards, and making him look much more original. So next up are the Cashbots as well. The short change was kind of a simple one here, as he's basically a lot easier to do since basically all we did was just take the cold color texture. Probably a missed opportunity to make him more original, but I guess we were just trying to stay faithful to what we were doing with its style. And, you know, he's basically like that on the Series 2 trading card, so we just kept him like that. So next up was... what? Oh dear, that was it. After that, we didn't really make much more progress with doing the rest. Technically, we also slightly redesigned the downsizer, but other than that, that was basically it. I guess our main focus was the Sellbots, because with this revamp as well, we were planning on redoing the whole Sellbot HQ area too, but this never ended up happening as well, but we really wanted this location revamp to be part of the project's launch. So yeah, we only got that far, although I did like what we were trying to do with the remakes, something familiar in the Disney style, yet original, which I'm pretty sure people would have liked to see. I really would have loved to see how we would have tried our hands on remaking the Flunky, you know, some of the other cogs that are harder to remake, but we never ended up getting that far. But that was probably because we got sidetracked with another thing, that thing being the cog building update. Oh boy. So a majority of the time of us working on this project, it was us working on this update that was a pretty unique approach of tackling a different aspect of Toontown. Now you might be wondering, what would such a revamp include? Well, there was going to be a lot done with it. One of the ideas was to remake all the cog buildings to be more 3D. This idea wasn't anything new, as this was something left over from the first attempt of Gear Grind. Momo made these two cogs being the Forecaster and Sandbagger, which, look, I know I might have a little bit of bias and I have a little bit of a soft spot for, but genuinely, I love these two so much, especially the Forecaster as well. Like, genuinely, I love this cog's design so much, it really does feel like something we would see from, like, Disney, given how, like, strange of a design it is. It's literally perfect. These two were always just planned for the building update, as they would be exclusive cogs that would just appear in there, and even around the HQs. However, I guess we liked the idea of adding cogs so much to the game that we wanted to expand this idea further, and add even more cogs to this update. So, me and the guys decided that we wanted to make more, and while in hindsight this was probably a bad move, since we really got distracted with this, we wanted to add 32, yes, 32 brand new cogs with this cog building update. We were basically doubling the original roster of the original cogs in Toontown Online, all in one update. Sadly, a lot of the designs of some of the cogs are kinda lost to time given the Discord got deleted, but while doing this, we had some ideas thrown up and drawn that we liked. Mind you, these were only just like sketches, nothing like too great. So stuff like the Makeshift, Hustler, Cheap Jacks, some ideas we had with some of the cogs. But while we had a lot of names, we were kinda struggling to figure out what would be good. Even myself, I thought some of these cogs that we were doing just weren't the best names. I think the one we struggled with the most were the boss bots. We got 8 Sellbots, 8 Lawbots, and Cash bots, but I think we were the most stuck with coming up with boss bots. We had some ideas we were throwing around like the Kingpin, but yeah, we were trying to figure that one out and we just couldn't really. But after much thought, here's what we ended up with. The Kiss Up, the Sweet Talker, the Sandbagger and Forecaster also getting updated designs, Sales Spokesman, Bamboozler, Heartthrobber, and Handsome Devil. For Cash bots, we have the Accountant Ant, Cheese Separator. Yeah, I didn't even understand this one either. Cheese Pair, my bad, sorry. Shylock, Pawnbroker, Fat Cat, Gold Bricks, the Cheapo, and even reviving the old Toontown Online concept, more so with its design, Mr. Wall Street. Next up is the Lawbots, being the Backseat Driver, Blabbermouth, Double Crosser, Ratifier, the Framer, Tub Thomper, Hades Corpse, and the Magister. Bossbot's a little shorter, which I'll get into later. We had the Watchdog, Pushover, Pressurizer, Blowhard, Bootlicker, and the White Knight. So yeah, we had a lot done design-wise with them. I was actually responsible with coming up with some of these designs for some of the cogs. Yes, Anthony, the game designer, I know, I'm so cool. Now, when I say design them, I mostly mean I would sometimes have like a rough idea of it, try to draw it out, or give like an outline to what I think it could look like, and from there, Momo would basically finalize that design. And I know I'm no game designer, I just kinda wanted to help with this process. I tried my hand at doing a bootlicker and a pushover design, but they really weren't turning out all that great, so we just didn't really go on with mine. I'd also like to mention I'm no good at drawing either, so I apologize if it doesn't look all that great. It was really just like rough ideas of what we were trying. I even tried to design a cog called the Wheelin' Dealer, but we never ended up using him. I did come up with the idea of the Double Crosser being a little more unique, with the idea of one side of his face being happy and the other side of it being mad. head. I also came up with the idea and kind of design for the framer with how he would basically mimic other cogs as he has like a TV for a head, and on his screen would show the cog that he would be mimicking their attacks or even dialogue. Although, in retrospect, this does sound like a better mini-boss than just a regular cog. He was just way more complex than the rest of them. I was even responsible for the design of the watchdog, which I feel like turned out pretty well. And I remembered I helped inspire the idea of the handsome devil, as like I drew a cog that was also named the same thing, and I kind of refused to show that drawing because that was made in 6th grade and I refused to show anybody my middle school drawings. Also, this was kind of unintentional, but I also kind of noticed that Smoke and Foreman also in 2016 had a cog called the handsome devil that he made, which was also a Sellbot. I promise that was unintentional because I completely forgot about that video he posted, but yeah, that just kind of randomly came to my mind. I feel like though a lot of people would have liked the handsome devil. I mean, hey, the final design that we came up with him, I thought he looked really good there. And lastly, I remember I also gave advice for the White Knight's design on basically making him like a chess piece for his head, and that was basically what we ended up doing there with him. Along with that, we even helped brought back some scrapped cogs like the Blowhard and the Kiss Up coming back. The older, unused designs for these cogs were going to be labeled as the Hades Corpse and Mr. Wall Street for the game, basically giving them their own identity in this game. We also had some designs inspired from like other cogs like the Blabbermouth with the Micromanager, and the Kiss Up looking like the Mingler's younger sister or something. Even the Pressurizer being inspired by like the Forecaster's design, and the Blowhard and Pushover having the same feels to like a telemarketer. And something to note was the Backseat Driver and the Pawnbroker had two different designs originally until we landed on something we liked better. However, while we were almost done with this, we kind of realized something. This is boring. Not only that, but it feels like we devoted too much time to this feature, realizing we still had other things to do. And for 3 people and only 1 person mainly doing the models, it was kind of a lot on Momo to do. So we figured a compromise. Since we didn't want all of this to go to waste, we cut the amount of cogs we wanted to do in half and just go from there. Those cogs that would end up making the cut would be the Watchdog, Pushover, Blowhard, White Knight, Backseat Driver, Double Crosser, Ratifier, and the Magister, Shylock, Pawnbroker, Fat Cat, Goldbricks, and finally the Sandbagger, Forecaster, Bamboozler, and Handsome Devil. And even then we weren't even able to finish all of them, but I'll get into that later. So yeah, we tried to make the most of what we had with these cogs. We even ended up redesigning the Goldbricks as we kind of thought the design in general didn't look all that great, and what we came up with, I mean, he wasn't too bad. He was definitely a huge improvement of what we had originally, but I think again we kind of had another tough time with him, since we basically just reused one of the older Lawbots. So yeah, we went to work with these cogs. We definitely had some changes here and there, like the Ratifier being a Suit A cog, and the Goldbricks as well even being a slim cog instead of a fat one, but here's what we ended up with. So first off, we have the Shylock here, and to be honest, he actually turned out pretty alright. I mean, yeah, the design definitely does look a little weird in getting used to, but once you get used to it, he's kind of cool. Albeit the head probably should have been a little more bigger, but other than that, I kind of liked him. The Pawnbroker here was also pretty alright. He definitely does look fitting for his design, but the Fat Cat was definitely the best one out of the bunch. He turned out really well. I'm glad he was able to capture that Cashbot feel to him. The Goldbricks was also alright. He's not really my favorite here. He definitely had a lot of design troubles like I previously mentioned, and while he's definitely alright overall, he was definitely the weakest out of the bunch. Oh, and I think it's also worth mentioning that these cogs can actually spawn outside of the cog buildings too, despite the fact that we mentioned that they were only meant for the cog buildings. They had chances of spawning in cog facilities and HQs, but then we basically just said forget it and just let them spawn everywhere. I think we kind of realized that just keeping them to the buildings would have been just really wasteful, and to be honest, I'm fine with that. The Lawbots definitely turned out the best. I like the Backseat Driver, and the Double Crosser came out really well. He was a cool idea being inspired from the Double Talker and the Two-Face, and making a design that was much more original from it. The Ratifier was definitely my favorite one here in this cog department. Everything about his design just worked so well. It really made him feel perfectly fit with the Lawbots. The Magister wasn't that bad. It definitely could have been better texture-wise. Plus, he did look a little weirder in the game as well. But overall, if he was more improved with his textures and maybe his design, he could have been a little better in game. But what we have in the game, he definitely does look a little rough. But for some reason, with the Magister, he can do upwards to 69 damage in this clip right here. I have no clue why he does that, but Yeah, I think that's like one of the buffs they were given these building cogs. Some of these things that the building cogs had honestly should have just been excluded, because that just seems really unfair for a regular cog. The Sellbots had two classics, the Sandbagger and Forecaster. They were given some updates here, and compared to their first iteration, they still look really good. I like the Sandbagger's better designed bag and face, but the Forecaster just looks so much more improved and awesome, and just when you thought his design couldn't get any better. He's again one of my favorite cogs out of all of them that we did here. Again, I really don't know what makes him so good, but I can just imagine him being part of like the cogs in Toontown Online. I just love his design a lot. He was definitely the best thing to come out of Gear Grind. Me and him are friends forever. The Bamboozler isn't too bad here as well. Probably the strangest one we have design-wise, but nothing too bad. I mean, all of these cogs have pretty out there designs, but that's what makes Toontown so special. Now, the Handsome Devil. Remember how I said people would have loved him? Yeah. So, he was never finished, which sucks because his design had a lot of potential to be possibly some of the best cogs here too. I did try to finish his textures in this edit, but honestly I just wish he was finished up and made the way he was always intended to look, because he looks super derpy here and not so great. The boss bots here were kind of a strange case. So you know the watchdog that was going to be in the game, hell, even had a pretty early model, and I was kind of excited to see this cog in the game. However, for whatever reason, we just didn't make him anymore. I forgot why, but yeah, he ended up getting cut. But uh-oh, now there's only 3 cogs, so what do we do now? Bring in another cog that we concept for the boss bots? Nope, let's have a different guy. Oh my god. Okay, so he's not the greatest since he was only made as a throwaway cog. Some might call it not good, but others will point out that this is literally just Nikocavo Avocado. Yes, as you can see, Nikocavo Avocado. Yeah, it really did suck that we couldn't do the guard dog, but at least we have this gem of a cog. The pushover, I'll kind of admit, I don't really like his design all that much, mainly because it kind of looks like a different looking telemarketer here. That, and also the model just feels kind of generic. The blowhard is definitely better, but it still feels as if the pushover and the blowhard shared the same ideas. But at least we saved the best for last, as the White Knight was definitely the best one here. He was another favorite out of the bunch, and honestly, I'm really happy with how he turned out, because he looks so good here. But yeah, that was basically all of the building cogs. The cogs also have custom attacks too, like the Double Cross, Gold Rush, and some other attacks that I'll list over here that I'll show. I really did like that idea of new attacks with these cogs. Like the pushover was supposed to have an attack that would literally just push you, which I remember me and Leo were kind of like thinking about doing. But a lot of the attacks we did, they were basically just the same old reused attacks these cogs would have. Isn't that funny? I talked about all of these cogs and we still have yet to talk about the cog building update. Well, now that we got all those cogs out of the way, let's take a look at the development history for the cog buildings and what we had planned for them. So, the plan for us was to do a few things. As previously mentioned, we wanted to redo the cog buildings as well. We have the models of the Lawbot one here, the Sellbot one, and even this Cashbot one if you could see in this picture. I even also have singular photos of the Sellbots and Lawbot ones here as well. However, when it came to putting this in the game, we kind of decided to scrap this idea, or at least the direction we were going in, because while the 3D building idea was kind of cool, it doesn't really clash well with the mostly 2D flat buildings here. Just go ahead and take a look at some of these photos and you be the judge of it. If we ever wanted this idea to work, we basically needed a street from like Fluffy Farms given how it's like an open space, so we just decided to just scrap the idea. Next were the interiors. There were some early screenshots of it being tested, but what we got was pretty cool since we made the area a lobby. It was never finished and needed help art-wise with the assets. However, we tried to make this area look like more of a lobby waiting room for the building, like a front desk, a couch, a desk here, a water cooler, some posters, a vending machine, and a janitor's room over there. You know, some cooler ideas to help update the cog buildings in general. You might notice that there's 2 doors here for the elevators to pop up. That's because either one would have led to either the upstairs or the downstairs. Yeah, so we had an idea of having a cog buildings that end up going downstairs, which we ended up calling it underground cog buildings. Originally, Leo wanted these buildings to be a surprise, so when you entered one, you wouldn't know if it was a regular building or an underground one. However, I kind of argued at the very least it should be more clear which one's an underground one and which one was a regular. So for the time about how we went with this was just making the builder a darker tint to let people know that this would be an underground building. Mainly with the eyes of the building, I'm not too sure why we did that, but that was basically how you could tell which was an underground building and which was a regular one. It's all in the eyes, folks. I know in retrospect this concept doesn't really sound like it makes any sense, but this was basically what we were doing with it. We were planning on giving the buildings all new floors as well. Like, the next area would have been a cubicle office, but we never really got past anything besides the lobby. We also had some other weird plans for the cog buildings, like cog building debris for when you beat these buildings and probably use it as currency, but I think at that point we were just trying to figure out what else we could do with this just that would stick with this update. I'm pretty sure a better way to utilize this instead of it just being currency was just probably to make it a part of the task line. I'm not sure if we ever did, but it was probably the best way of us going about it. When we did technically finish the underground buildings, all they were in its alpha state was just darkened cog buildings with lava around it. Makes zero sense, but that's what we did. Yeah, I'm sorry I don't really have an explanation for a lot of these design choices, but like seriously, a lot of them just didn't really make sense. I really couldn't give you an answer even if I tried. It was kind of a mess. Even when we had it in private testing, we even knew this, because after we went back to the drawing board to probably fix a lot of its problems, but we never ended up doing that, just like everything else here. Also, a feature that these buildings had were multi-cog type buildings, so theoretically you could be in a building with cashbots and bossbots, lawbots and sellbots, sellbots and bossbots, or even sellbots, cashbots, and lawbots, so it was kind of a pretty neat idea. So yeah, that was basically all of the plans we had with them, unless I'm forgetting something else here. But yeah, that was basically it and all we done with it, which kinda sucks because I really liked the path we were going in with updating these cog buildings, but it was clear we were having trouble figuring this out and designing it properly. But I mean, hey, at least this building was responsible for some pretty cool cogs we made, so that's always a plus. Whew, okay, what else is there? There was also some other smaller features that I'll run through now. The ability to toggle on the day and night system and the whitelist. Even randomly popping up, you would find treasures being silly surges, which would actually give you some jelly beans. Teleport greetings that can actually change your messages when someone was teleporting to you. You can have stuff like greetings, howdy, and my favorite, hot tibbity tub. Chat colors, being able to switch the color of your chat. The return of dance unites from Toontown Infinite. So here's an interesting one. The ability to change your cog suit in the lobbies. So the idea was going into the cog suit page from all the previous tiers you had, you would be able to switch each one. Now, despite this being such a specific and unneeded feature, it's such a treat being able to switch from cogs like the mover and shaker to a Two-Face, or a Glad-Hander to a Mr. Hollywood, or even stuff like a Mr. Hollywood to a Loan Shark, or a Corporate Raider to a Big Cheese, or a Big Cheese to a Flunky. Yeah, you can be a level 50 Flunky, how cool. And also, you would have the ability to toggle having a head or no head. And something else that I'm shocked no other server has added before, but the ability to have cog emotes for you to do, like with tunes. I love this feature a lot, giving you something to do while just waiting in the lobbies, which I'm kinda shocked no one's done this before. Even for the summons, despite this being an incredible waste, you'd be able to use Sue's in the sticker book. Not Sue's here, but Sue's in your book. The idea would basically be is if you would sue a cog and you would win things like jelly beans or clothing tickets. In theory, it's a cool idea, but I think a lot of the rewards we have were just incredibly wasteful. Considering how summons work, you could be using it on that rather than just be suing the cog, since there's way more options of summoning cogs as there's now different invasions. So really, why would you ever want to sue a cog, unless it has something pretty interesting to it? If we did have like exclusive stuff you could potentially get and had the risk of getting jelly beans, that would probably be cool, but for the most part it was kind of useless, but could have been utilized pretty well. Something that was also going to make an appearance was an endless building. So that's now 3 servers trying: Toontown Realms, Toontown Galaxy, and now Toontown Gear Grind. But literally all this was just an endless building, nothing special than just endless amounts of floors for you to play until you had enough. There was plans of having like a leaderboard, and this could have been a way to train your gags, but for the most part this was just basically what it was. I'm also pretty sure this room was replicating the same interior and fill that Toontown Apex had, so there's always that. But another strange inclusion that we had was the feature of other colored laser cogs. So there would have been blue laser cogs, yellow laser cogs, and even green ones, on top of there also being red ones, with each of them having their own abilities too. The green ones would have had more health, so using just lure and throw to kill green one won't work on its own, so you'll probably need more people to focus on him since he has over 300 health. The red ones though are just really powerful since they end up doing 40 to 50 damage as well, so again, you really want to be focusing on these two. The other two aren't as bad. The blue ones have a better chance of missing attacks, and the yellow ones always attack you. So either way, you're dealing with one of these cogs advantages that are just a huge inconvenience, which I guess better helps you not to mess up when doing these puzzles, and also the green cog replaces the clerk of each of these floors, which I think is pretty fitting. It's strange that he's a laser cog here, but I'm just gonna tell myself to shut up. Oh yeah, I also like to mention that the Legal Eagle also had an alternative style too. I'm not too sure why, it doesn't really look all that great, but yeah, there was another style that was included. A nice detail that there was with the coin mint was that there was actually gold Skelecogs instead of regular Skelecogs. It was probably a weird detail, but you know, it's something nice, I guess. There's nothing different with them, but I guess it's a nice change. And even more on topic about the enemies, the Skelecogs too are gonna have their own redesigns. We were really going all out with this enemy revamp. The Skelecogs are gonna be a little more faithful to the original designs with their bodies and such, given this more creepier and intimidating approach. Momo made these, and while they were pretty decent and had a pretty cool idea going on, I don't know if he really liked how these turned out, plus there was some weirder issues to it, so again, plans could have been there to redo them, but we just never did. These were never in the live game for when I was testing the project, but we do have some screenshots of them. Also, this wasn't a joke, we were unironically gonna do hot tub cogs. Nope, not a joke. We only mentioned it, we didn't do actual work on it, but I don't know, man, if we had more people, maybe this could have been a real thing. Maybe it could have. And of course, this just wouldn't be a Toontown server if we just didn't try to get some newer tunes here. Momo a little while ago had some concepts of a goat and chicken tunes he posted on Twitter, or were on his Twitter, but they're now deleted, and I feel too lazy to go looking for it, and plus I'm pretty sure he doesn't want people seeing it, so I won't show it. And I guess there was plans to add them into the game. Even Jeeper Pretzel was working on a cow model for the game, but both of these plans just never fell through. And going way further into Gear Grind's history, there was actually even plans for a Panda tune all the way back towards the beginning of Gear Grind, but I guess this tune never made it into the cut as well. And finally, our last plan was to redo Toontown Central. KH Decoder had made this mock-up of Toontown Central's Toon Hall, making it much more closer to the Disneyland one. And while the texturing needed a better job, I kinda liked the idea since I thought it was pretty cool on trying to do that. I'm pretty sure there was going to be Disneyland elements inspired for this Toontown Central redesign. However, there wasn't really much planning for this, so even I don't know how this was supposed to turn out. And there really wasn't much work done besides this one image. Oh, and I definitely saved the best feature for last. The daily catches for fish. What a wonderful feature. And yeah, that basically wraps up everything that was planned for Toontown Gear Grind and worked on. So after all this, why did the game end? Well, I mean, if it wasn't obvious, but a few reasons was, first, a lot of people were getting bored of this project, and also just the project was just plagued with issues, as this game felt like such a Clash clone that we were making, but also the game just felt very messy and just wasn't all that good what we were making. We had good ideas, but it does feel like we weren't executing them properly. We were planning for the release to contain all of the Sellbots done, which we finished, the cog building update, which was partially finished, the Toontown Central task line revamp, which was, I believe, finished. We also had some small private testing, and the reception for it was kind of mixed for the most part. And before we can even fix any of these issues and problems, we just decided to stop all of our progress. Now, it's not to say we stopped working on the game because of the poor reception. We really liked on what we were working on. It was just, we really didn't have the resources to finish it. Momo and Jeeper had left since they were basically our only modelers, and Momo, I'm sure, just got really tired and unmotivating since he was the one doing most of the modeling work, and after a while that must have been enough on the guy. And having the other people leave and really no way of finishing this project because of our low status, we just decided to cancel the game. That was also another issue. We really didn't have a plan B too if someone left here. While we could have still continued without them, I think we just kind of realized for now people were losing interest on working on this project. We had very little people working on it, and all the issues we still had, we just didn't seem motivated on finishing everything. So yeah, with that, the game was shelved and was just a relic from the past. It was also probably a good call we never really went public with this game, because if we did, we probably would have been disappointing everyone who was following it, so I guess it was probably smart and dumb we didn't reveal anything, but at the same time, I feel like us not revealing anything was probably the reason why this game ended up dying out. But yeah, with all that, what's next? Well, I'm not really sure, and before anyone asks, no, this isn't going open source, so forget about it. Sadly, that decision's just not up for me to make. Pretty much everyone else is just working on their own thing. Like, most of the people from Gear Grind now help with a project called Sunrise Games. You might have heard about them since they preserve all kinds of MMOs like Toontown Online for people to easily access. Even other games like Fusion Fall, Club Penguin Island, Club Penguin, LEGO Universe, and so many other games. And aside from that, whenever Gear Grind's brought up, everyone who's been involved has been pretty open to sharing details with the game, with its plans, cogs, and other little features we've done. We've even all have jokingly talked about a revival and even considered it. Even some people I've told this to have asked for it to come back as they like some of the ideas and features for this game and even offering to contribute towards it. It's unclear if it'll ever return, which if so, I'd possibly consider helping it out again. But for now, there really aren't any plans for its return at this moment, which, if it did return though, a lot would definitely have to be redone and designed properly, because let me tell you, I'm no professional game designer. A lot of things here were good in concept, just weren't really thought out properly. I could talk about a thing that I like and don't like and try to give my input on, but I feel like working on here has really come to show me that game design for Toontown is a lot harder than I thought it would be. So, you know, at least this was a pretty fun learning experience and something that I took part of in summer of 2021. I really do hope to see Gear Grind return one day, and some of the features have been put into other servers like Toontown Realms with their multi-cog buildings and their teleport messages, and even ODS slightly with how all the classic tunes planned for Gear Grind. The same guy is now adding it into Operation Desert Storm, and even the remade gags into the game as well. Well, I guess it technically wasn't Gear Grind, but you know, same idea. So it definitely looks like that these features are gonna live on and dissolve into other things. So it's very possible we could see the return of these cogs in some of these games. I guess it's up to Leo or Momo to decide to what they want to do with their cogs, because Leo has shown interest in reviving these cogs and remaking them for something else in the future. At least for the ones that he came up with, not any of Momo's stuff. I would really love to see the return of Gear Grind one day. Will we? Probably not, but at least we'll have these videos to always remember Gear Grind by. It obviously had a lot of problems, but if it was ever fixed, given more time, we really could have had something cool on our hands. Anyways, that's it for now. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I really hope you guys enjoyed the showcase.
Blah, 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 blah.